Let's come back to the list from that study we went over earlier. We know that organ meats make up a good part of that list, with liver being at the top. For a lot of people coming to this conversation, including those into the diet might be a new thing. In that case, how do you recommend they get started? Because I know there's a lot of organ meat supplements these days. Obviously, we can go right to the organ and have those in an array of different ways of preparing them. If you're working with somebody, how do you get them started?
Well, there are a number of options. The first is to eat organ meats, right? So that's the way that our ancestors did it. Even our more recent ancestors, probably many people's grandparents, consumed organ meats, or great grandparents, depending on your age. If you're listening to this, in the U.S. and Canada, organ meats were still in a common part of the diet up until World War II, and then after World War II is when that shifted for a number of reasons I won't go into here. But organ meats were really part of every diet. Almost all diets across the world that we're aware of until the 21st century, or the later part of the 20th century and the 21st century. And the organ meats still are very much a part of many cultures' diet around the world today. So that's one option. However, organ meats have a distinct taste and texture that many people find unpalatable, especially if you didn't grow up eating them. I think if we grew up eating them, we're much more likely to acquire the taste. Whereas if we did not, it can be really difficult. And some people have just an extreme aversion. They can't even smell liver, or even one small bite, or even if liver is mixed with some other regular ground beef, they can still detect it, and it really puts them off. And so if we think about it, like, okay, you can eat organ meats like liver and onions like your grandparents did. If you find that palatable and you like that, that is awesome. That's a great way to do it. However, you're in the distinct minority if that's true for you. Like in 15 years of treating patients, I would say, I had maybe 20 patients in all that time that really enjoyed eating liver and other organ meats straight like that. Another option, and this works for still a relatively small percentage of people, but it does, much higher percentage than people who just eat organ meats straight, would be to combine liver with other foods. So one thing that I often recommend is getting a few ounces of liver and then chopping that up small and then cooking it with like a couple pounds of ground beef, and then seasoning the ground beef with like fajita or taco seasoning. There's a lot of good organic options out there now, and then consuming that throughout the week. So you're getting a relatively small amount of liver per serving or other organ meats per serving, but if you consume that entire amount in a given week, or if it's 1 pound or whatever it is, then you're still going to be getting one serving of organ meats per week, which is a really good amount because it's so nutrient dense. This is the benefit. You don't need a ton of it. Even 1 or 2 servings of organ meat a week is just off the charts in terms of its nutritional value. You really don't need more than that. And there's potentially even some risk in consuming more than that because of how high the nutrient levels are. I've seen some patients who got a little too excited about liver and were eating it every day, and they had iron levels that were off the charts. And iron, when it's high, it can be very problematic and cause a lot of problems. So that's something to keep in mind. Moving from there, another option is supplementation, as you mentioned, Jesse. And there are supplements now that have freeze-dried organ meats from grass-fed animals. And so they harvest the organs, they quickly freeze them and dry them and desiccate them into a powder and put that powder into capsules. That is really pretty close to eating the organs themselves because they are the whole organs, and they are very fresh in the sense that they were freeze dried just after harvesting. They contain the full nutrient profile that consuming the fresh organs does. And they're from grass fed animals, and if it's come a reputable company who's doing a good job making them, then that's going to be a very good option. And to be honest, that's the option that the vast majority of my patients have chosen over the years, just because they had trouble stomaching even the like the organ meats mixed with the ground meat approach, which again works um, works for some, but not for very many people. So that's kind of the spectrum of options. And then when supplementing with organ meat, um, I think it's important to target multiple different organs, because each organ has a different nutritional profile. So we saw that liver was the highest on the list, and I think it's the most important. But we also saw that spleen, heart, kidney, pancreas is also very nutrient dense. They didn't measure pancreas. I talked to Ty Beal about this. There's very little nutritional data in the databases that they used on pancreas, so it was difficult to include it in the study. But they have done some analysis. There's been analysis done on pancreas, and it's very, very high, and almost certainly would have appeared in the top in the that up there alongside of heart and kidney and spleen as well. So when I formulated my organ supplement for my company Adopt Naturals, I wanted to have 5 different organs in there: liver, spleen, pancreas, heart, and kidney. But we included much more liver than any other organ, because as we learned from that scale, liver is even 5 times more nutrient dense than the next organ that was measured, which is spleen. So we included over 2 grams of liver, and then 500 milligrams of spleen, pancreas, heart, and kidney. And I think that's the best approach, because you're getting the entourage effect of all of the different organs, but you're still getting more of the king, so to speak, liver, in terms of nutrient density.
This right here is my favorite protein powder, the 100% grass-fed bone broth protein from Paleo Valley. It comes in 3 flavors: unflavored, chocolate, and vanilla. The chocolate and vanilla you can just mix with water. They taste incredible just like that. And I like to take the unflavored, scoop it in my black coffee, mix it in. I barely taste it, but I'm getting that collagen and protein boost. These protein powders have been third-party tested for over 40 different herbicides and pesticides. They've come back negative. There's no chemicals or solvents used in the processing, just water. As a viewer of the show, click the link in the description to save 15% off this protein today. Again, this is my favorite protein. I know you're going to love it. And I assume up until this point, when we're talking about organs, we're referring to beef. How do you feel about other animals, getting the organs from those, whether it be buffalo, pig, chicken, and so on?
Yeah. Chicken liver, for example, is one of, I think, particularly chicken liver pate, is one of the more palatable organ meats. I might even call it, beef heart is probably the gateway organ meat. And some people would even argue that it's not an organ meat, because the heart is a muscle. So while it's classified as an organ, it doesn't really it's not an organ in the way that the liver or the pancreas is. It's the actual tissue is more like a muscle, and the nutrient profile is different. I would say that chicken liver is the gateway organ meat, or certainly the gateway liver meat. A lot of people are able to eat chicken liver pate, but they don't actually like the taste of or texture of beef liver. Chicken liver is very high in folate. It's higher in folate than beef liver. And like I said before, Jesse, each nutrient, even within beef organs, each organ has different nutrient profile, but then different organs of different animals have nutrient profiles. Another example is goose liver is one of the highest sources of vitamin K2 in the diet. So you see this across different nutrients and and I think that, organ meats in general across all of the ruminant animals, and even some non-ruminant animals like chickens are very nutritious, and that's just simply a function of how physiology works and where where nutrients get stored in the tissues.
I'm glad you brought up the flip side to everything we've been talking about, the fact that if you're not careful, you could actually overdo it with some of these nutrients. Do you find working with people that that only happens with the organs? Or are there some of these other nutrient dense foods that we can overdo, whether it be in supplement form or whole food form?
It's certainly possible. It's organ meats, like in liver in particular, it's more of a realistic outcome because um, just of how nutrient dense it is. Like I said, it's 11. Everything else on this on the scale is in the you know 50s, 60s, 70s, and you quickly get into the hundreds and even the thousands. So it's just so much more nutrient dense than other foods that it's just easier to do that. Having said that, um, there are, particularly if people who are kind of hyper absorbers of certain substances, it could be there are other foods that can be potentially problematic, but you would have to generally be eating a whole lot of other foods besides organ meats to exceed significantly the nutritional value, or you would have to be like eating foods that are not typically consumed in large amounts for a specific reason. So, one example that comes to mind is selenium, Brazil nuts for selenium. Um, People have learned about the importance of Brazil nut or about selenium, and then they've found out that Brazil nuts have a lot of selenium in them, which is true. And if someone just started eating like 2, 3 Brazil nuts a day, they could actually exceed the recommended amount of selenium pretty easily by doing that. But again, that's kind of a special case because most people aren't typically just eating 3 Brazil nuts every day. That's not like that. That's someone who's trying to achieve a particular goal. It's not just usually a typical feature of the diet.
If you enjoyed that clip, press here for the full episode. I'll see you over there.
Most recent research suggests that over 90% of Americans fall short of the optimal intake of not just one, but several micronutrients. This is also true in other developed countries around the world. So there definitely has been a decline.